2022 NFL Week 1 is finally here. It's had months to mature as far as the lines go. And I believe that we're recording on Monday that there's going to be quite a few little minor changes. I don't feel like these lines are going to stick around. This is going to be actually a brand new concept that either flops or is gold. Not entirely sure. I've never seen the topic done elsewhere. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through each game and basically just touch on, well, what are we going to really learn, or what our expectations are, based on what happens in the game, what's going to transpire, so to speak. So, Ron, welcome to the show again. You've become quite the regular.
Uh-oh. I've gone from guest to something. I don't know. But yeah, what you said is we're going to first guess what we might be thinking before the end of the games. So instead of sitting here a week from now and saying, are we going to overreact or underreact, we're going to make some guesses as to how we would react.
Yeah, and there may be a common theme of redundancy. We're going to have to see. I'll start it off with Buffalo and the Rams, which I've kind of ignored, and I'm kind of curious why Buffalo is just hanging at 2.5. As far as this game goes, it's not going to surprise me to see Buffalo get off to a slow start. If anything, I'd be surprised if the Rams didn't perform well. But potentially this is like a teaser killer because everybody's using the Rams in teasers. So just another perspective on that game. But no matter what happens in this game, it's not going to necessarily tell me much. These are two high-quality teams. Like I said, if Buffalo sputters a little bit, that could be a little. It's not going to, say too much because they may sputter out of the gate. What are your thoughts, Ron?
Okay. Well, I like the fact that we might disagree right out of the box. I think Buffalo will start faster than the Rams. The Rams in the past on opening day, we know their tendency each and every year under McVay. They play no one in the preseason, but they've been lucky to play other teams that haven't been ready. This is the most ready team that I think the Rams are going to face in week 1 for a little while. So I expect, especially in the first half, the Rams to have a problem. But if we're talking about after the game, I'm not going to change expectations. I'm similar to what you said. I'm not going to overreact to if the Rams suddenly lose this game or even if they win this game, because exactly what you said, they're two good teams. They're going to make adjustments. They've got the experienced quarterback and so on and so forth. But I do think this is a tough opponent for the Rams out of the gate, and I'm going to factor that into the equation.
Yeah, well, that's certainly the case here. It's an interesting game, to say the least, and it's going to be just a great game to watch. Personally, I don't have an opinion on the game. I could see it going either way. But I'm going to have to find people that agree with me to continue on the show in the future. No, this is the process that we actually go through each and every week, but just a little twist. We don't do this exact thing, but, I think both of us sometimes come in from have areas of weakness, and we fill each other in, and that's where the value comes in going through this stuff. As far as the next game with the Baltimore and the Jets, I believe that the only thing that would concern me is if Baltimore got blown out. That's pretty much the only thing that could make me perk my ears up a little bit here, but I certainly don't expect that to happen. What do you think, Brad?
I think I'm expecting Flacco to come in with a vanilla game plan. So I would pretty much be on the same wavelength as you. It would concern me if Baltimore, after all its work in the preseason, like every other preseason, and now healthy except for their mascot, who apparently is on IR and
Yeah.
is lost for the season. So that's a big blow right away to them. But other than their mascot, we finally get to see the secondary. We might get to see the left tackle. We get to see Jackson. We get to see Dobbins. It would concern me if Baltimore looked poor in this game against a Jet defense that was non-existent last year.
So we agreed there. New Orleans and Atlanta. I think this is interesting because this is a divisional rivalry. New Orleans starting off on the road. It never surprises me that underdog teams, especially at home, come out week one strong. So even if the Saints lose, it's not going to completely surprise me and make me panic on them unless they were obviously lose horribly. But I think Atlanta has got a puncher's chance here. I really don't expect New Orleans to lose, obviously. I expect them to do okay. But I believe Atlanta's got enough spunk here to, at least stay in the game. But even if they don't, it is what it is. The only surprise here is if New Orleans really looked bad. What about you?
Okay, this is, of course, we didn't script this at all beforehand, but this is a classic overreaction game that's going to appear if Atlanta wins. I do a week one after this week. I would do my yearly week one overreaction article. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter to me at all what happens in this game. It's going to be, I'm not going to overreact. You said it's a divisional game. These teams play each other twice a year. They know each other. It's been a highly contentious series. I will not overreact. So it's almost as if I've already written the article for next week if Atlanta wins.
Yeah, so we're pretty much on the same wavelength there. As far as New England, Miami goes, that's a very interesting game because I don't think there's any result other than either team getting completely humiliated that would surprise me. I mean, I could see New England having the formula that works against a new coach and Tua getting used to his new toys to play with and such, or they could be on fire. So either way is not going to surprise me. What are your thoughts on this game?
Belichick brought his team to Miami and the humidity early this year. This has been a tough spot for New England. What have they lost? Something like 7 of 9, at least against the spread recently. It's not been a good series for them. Basically, I would be prepared to downgrade a Miami a little bit if they came away and lost this game. And it looked not necessarily that they lost bad, but it looked like a deserved loss. I would say, wait a second. Up and down on Miami all preseason. Maybe the parts are not ready to go. I'm not saying Miami will do this, but if Miami does lose this game by a touchdown or so, I may be willing to downgrade Miami, saying they're maybe too fast, too soon. They're not quite ready.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that. They may just need a game to get under their belt with the new coaching and what I mentioned before with the players. So I'm not going to ding them if they lose unless they get just humiliated. As far as Cleveland, Carolina, is that an interesting game? Why don't you go first on that one, Mr.
I could go first on that because basically high variance in this game, extremely high variance. We've got the Cleveland quarterback now at Carolina. We don't know how that's going to work out. We know that Cleveland's a relatively decent team at most of the other positions. They've got a quarterback waiting for his chance to start after a few years of not starting. We've got a Carolina team that has McCaffrey back. I mean, I think we may see a surprising result, but I don't know which way we're going to see it. I'm just going to sit back, learn, study, see if I've handicapped Carolina correctly, see if I understand what Cleveland's trying to do with this offense, brand new receivers. I'm just going to be willing to pivot whatever I write in the next couple of days on this game. Just going to say, throw it out the window right away for this game because I'm open to anything that happens in this game.
But you're kind of leaning toward Carolina, correct?
I would probably be leaning toward Carolina because their foundation is pretty sound in terms of how they should be able to keep Cleveland's offense under wraps. My only question is, what about Carolina's offense? What about Carolina's offensive line against Cleveland's pass rush, which can be formidable at times? It's a fascinating game to me. I think for Carolina's coaching future, they need to get off to some sort of good start. Very important game for them.
Well, they're never going to be healthier than they are now. Obviously an injury-ridden team, and that's what kind of scares me because I was kind of leaning toward expecting Brissett to just have an average performance, and that would be enough for Cleveland. And as we've discussed in these videos, I've become more open to the idea of, hey, wait a minute, this Carolina was very strong in my metrics last year. They were doing many things right. They were just brutalized with injuries, and McCaffrey didn't play, and all kinds of everything that could go wrong went wrong for them last year. So I need to be open to the idea that Carolina can be good, much better than what I thought they would be a couple of months ago. So this is a wait and see. And I couldn't agree more. I don't think it matters what either team does, because if Brissett fails miserably, he gets a game under his belt, and he can come back with an adequate game. And I guess the only surprise would be if Carolina really just played poorly and just looked completely discombobulated, so to speak. But even that's going to be tough because Cleveland's, they've got the goods. So both of these teams may have the goods. So
what do
I
you
agree
have on
with
the
you. I don't think
over?
there's much to learn here.
What do you have on the over/under right now?
41 and a half and 41.
Yeah, I would be. I don't expect a shootout. So if one team really outscores the other with these sound defenses, I might take note of that. That would be kind of a post analysis I would do.
Yeah, I agree because I don't expect this game to be high scoring in the least. I mean, how could it be?
Now remember, Mayfield's only had a month there, so he doesn't know the whole playbook.
Yeah, he's going to be limited in what he's going to be able to do offensively because he's going to be rather vanilla, just adjusting. Don't you expect that?
Yeah, I think they'll just kind of trade punches at first. So if somebody explodes and scores 28 or more points, probably be a surprising result to me that I'd want to dig deeper into.
Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. I'm not sure I'm going to learn anything no matter what happens. I would be surprised if Pittsburgh gave up bushels of points.
Yeah. They're flying under the radar. I'll tell you what I'm watching in this game, and that's both offensive lines. Pittsburgh's offensive line did no favors for Big Ben in his last 2 years. I mean, they had a complete rebuilding job, and nobody gave Ben enough credit for getting them into the playoffs despite being under fire on that offensive line. And we know what happened with Cincy last year. Burrow just went down and down and down. And the parts are different. They're going to be better, but this is week one. My watch area is completely both offensive lines.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Pittsburgh's supposed to have the worst offensive line, but a running quarterback back there might change the dynamic of their weakness or strength in that department. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree with that, and I also agree with your opening statement on this game. Probably won't learn much other than some personnel stuff. I'm not going to make major adjustments at all after week one in this series.
I agree 100%. San Francisco and Chicago, I believe the only thing that would worry me is if San Francisco, just looked horrible. I think these are two different classes of teams. It's never going to surprise me to see Chicago have a good game because Fields has that potential to have a great game. I don't expect him to have a great game, but you can't be surprised if he has the occasional great game. uh, especially against San Francisco. So, what are your thoughts, Ron?
Well, I'm willing to politely disagree again in this particular case. I think this could be another great week one overreaction part of my article next week if Chicago pulls the upset. Jimmy Ward's gone from the secondary. Like we've talked about, I expect Fields to go 0 for 6 in one of the quarters and then go 3 for 5 for 112 yards and run for 40 yards in another quarter. And it could happen against San Francisco, who they're not a complete team. And we have Trey Lance against a decent defense in Trey Lance's debut as supposed all-year starter with Jimmy G lurking in the background. Would it surprise me if San Francisco took care of business and methodically beat Chicago and their new staff? No. But it also wouldn't surprise me if San Francisco was in for a dogfight in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you've got these week one matchups are tough. There's always these insane upsets. And you just can't be surprised by anything after week one. I agree with what you said for the most part. Getting to Philadelphia, Detroit, I originally thought the line was nuts. I expect Detroit to show up, show lots of passion, make some great plays, but they're also going to blunder and potentially give the game back up. So I don't have unrealistic expectations of Detroit, and they could even fall flat on their face. That would be a shame to see. But, if you look back last year, their offense thrived coming from behind, and this is going to be a different situation. And I think we mentioned it the last time. If I hear Lombardi's commercial or commercial filler one more time about how Philadelphia is very difficult to prepare for with their unique running game, and some teams can manage it fine, and some teams get eaten alive. So that's one of my concerns there. Philadelphia better show something. I mean, I would think. I mean, I'm not going to overreact to either of the results in this game for either team, but they have to show that they're not bad and that they can potentially live up to expectations. Or I think the ears will perk up if Philadelphia really laid a turd here. And I kind of expect the game to go kind of high scoring a little bit. I'd be surprised if there wasn't high scoring and that the defense is held up. What about you?
Both teams are a work in progress, in my opinion. Philly didn't beat any playoff teams last year. Detroit mainly looked better in mop-up action. And I think both teams have improved. Philly's got a couple of new players in the secondary that automatically have improved there. And the Lions have added some parts to the team that have changed over from the slower Matt Patricia days. And I think both teams by the end of the year will be better than they are right now because they're adjusting to what their lineups are going to be. I think the game hinges on how well Detroit manages Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts runs wild against them, it presents a problem for Detroit, who didn't show enough of a pass rush last year to do anything else. And so if they lose containment on the run and they can't get to the passer, that's going to be a problem. I probably won't make too many adjustments, if any, after the game. I'm not going to overreact. I'm just going to say these teams are a work in progress, and we'll see how they go week to week in September.
Yeah, I agree. And, I'll remind you, they took care of business against Murray, even though he was a little dinged up last year. So you would think that they could at least do an okay job and not embarrass themselves against mobile Hurts. What do you think?
That remains to be seen. But again, the Lions, Philly, they had an injury in the offensive line as well. So we don't know about that. They've got a lot of great parts. They've added wide receivers. Like I said, they added cornerback and the safety. The question is, how ready are they going to be week one? So I'll keep an open mind.
Yeah, I did. That Detroit home crowd is going to be fired up, probably as much as they have been in close to a decade. So that's one issue, handicapping that game. Indianapolis, Houston. Now, this one's really interesting to me because obviously divisional road favorite of more than a touchdown seems like kind of a lot on week one. Um, it's teetering up to 8.5, so it's getting Indy's the one getting support. I thought Houston might get the support week one, so I'm a little surprised by that. But you've got the new coach in Houston. You've got the 30 plus new players. You can't blame them if they lay a turd week one. Um, they potentially could show up. Indianapolis, has to not lay an egg as far as I'm concerned. Um, this is a good situation for them to thrive in. It would just be a real surprise if Indianapolis lost the game to me.
I'm getting a little concerned for Indy right now. Number one, Houston didn't look bad in the preseason, and I took a little notice of that. Number two, Davis Mills seems like a really smart guy coming out of Stanford, and he progressed faster than I thought and faster than probably most people. And he gets that Indy soft zone defense that annoys me to no end. And so he's going to complete a large number of passes this game. We saw recently Jacksonville win a game week one when they shouldn't, and then not win another game. We saw San Francisco beat the Rams 28-0, I think, week one a few years ago. And then they didn't win another game until the final week against the Rams. Maybe Houston wins this game, but they're still really, really bad. To me, it's really about how ready Indy and Matt Ryan is. How is he in the red zone? He hasn't been as proficient in the red zone. I won't make any post-game one adjustments on Houston, but I might if Indy, if I see the same old junk from them.
Yeah, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. We talked about it the last show. Is that Indianapolis secondary was just brutal, and if they can't, show some progress from last year, that's going to be a real issue. So, and we also talked about this. It's not going to surprise me to see Houston go over their season wins in the least. So
no, but that would annoy me too, since I have a future on them.
But so that's about that's about it there. I mean, limited expectations. Just an Indianapolis giving up a ton of passes is going to concern us both. Jacksonville at Washington, boy, is that a doozy. I can guarantee you it doesn't matter what happens in that game. It's not going to hit the radar for me in the least. What about you?
Yeah. It's a game not worth talking about because I have no opinions of either team. So it's going to be another one of those games to say, Ron, just be open-minded about this. Look at the results. Kind of chart them out. Don't make any changes after week one. But if you see something brewing after 2 or 3 weeks, run with it one way or another. But, maybe Jacksonville does progress to some great extent because Urban Meyer is not there. Maybe Carson Wentz is the answer for Washington. I'm just going to keep an open mind, probably change absolutely nothing after this week.
I think we could probably agree that these two teams could, have a wide variance. It requires you to sit back and absorb a little bit and not overreact. And I think you kind of referenced it, that probably these teams are going to take longer than other teams to really feel any confidence backing or going against. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm not going to run to the window saying, wow, I'm really bullish on Jacksonville, but I would be interested to see how competitive they are. And I may say, hey, in the right situation, they're going to keep games close because they're going to be more strategic coaching wise. They've upgraded the roster, but it's still not a playoff roster. And then, we know Washington resides in a division that could be completely up for grabs, but they don't really play those divisional teams until the end of the year. So they're still, if they don't show enough progress, maybe there's still mismatches and you get the value later in the year. I'm just going to write little notes here and there, but I'm proud to say I've not formed an opinion on either team.
Well, I think the bottom line is whether this game's a close defensive battle or a shootout. We're not going to know anything about either of these teams and what they really have. So it doesn't. I just don't see the result mattering all that much because both of these teams seem to have the same degree of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Uh, so if we're kind of putting them in the same category, what is there to really learn? Is my perspective.
Yeah. We can move on because I just think the variance with those teams is high.
Well, go ahead with Kansas City, Arizona, my friend.
Well, this is an intriguing game too because Arizona started fast. Many of the last years they really rested a lot of offensive starters, but I still expect their offense to thrive. The public is going to be looking for a shootout. Maybe not, because Kansas City's added a few parts on defense that are a little bit underrated, and Arizona has the players, they just haven't coached them up as enough. I have no expectations for this game, Chris. I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm just going to watch the Kansas City wide receivers, and I'm going to watch the young linebackers for Arizona. So I have watch points on my sheets already, but I don't know how it's going to turn out, which is fine.
I think you kind of hit one topic that it would be unusual for Arizona to lay an egg out of the gate. So if they laid an egg out of the gate, where they looked really bad, and every single previous year they come out of the gate hot, well, I'm going to take a little bit of notice. I mean, it's not going to be any immediate changes in what I choose to do, but I would be inclined to just stay away from them more if they laid an egg there. And Kansas City, you know what? They can't really surprise me here. I'm not that high on Kansas City, although I respect the fact that they could do very well. But my personal opinion is they potentially could start off slow. They started off slow last year, and I'm not going to get too much out of that side of things.
Yeah, so I'll endorse what you said about Arizona. That's a good point. If they go against the norm and this doesn't work out well with how well that roster has been built, that's a problem. So I will agree with you there. And we've seen Kansas City, when they get hot, they get red hot. And
Yeah.
it's based on their schedule. It may not happen early, but I wouldn't want to pivot just because they start slow.
No, I agree. Las Vegas and the Chargers is. Um, I don't think. I think just if either team completely breaks down, that would be my only concern. But I'm kind of in a hurry up and wait mode on both of these teams, regardless of the result week one. How about you?
Uh, uh, I think revenge games matter when they're standalone games and when there's something that really crazy happened in that last particular game, or playoff revenge early in the season, not late in the
Right.
season. This is essentially playoff revenge. Game 272, 69 minutes and 59 seconds, and then the Raiders kick the Chargers out of the playoffs. It would make me disappointed if the Chargers didn't come out fired up in this game, and I would take notice. Uh,
Well,
as far as and the Raiders, I'm going to keep an open mind because they look better with one additional sacker, Chandler Jones, and of course Devontae Adams.
when they got kind of rolling later on last season, also, so um, not
Well,
my.
there was randomness in there. 4-0 in overtime games is unrepeatable.
Yeah.
I mean, in reality, the Chargers are clearly, in my opinion, a more well-rounded team on offense and defense. We know the elephant in the room, so we just hope LSU's kicker and snapper are not here for the Chargers today. Nebraska's special team coordinator is not here trying an onside kick here and there or whatever. If the Chargers could just play average on special teams, I expect them to fully contend all year long. Probably won't read anything other than the revenge factor into this game because I think both teams are highly talented.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to pat myself on the back, but one of the things I excel in is market reading. And for the life of me, I cannot understand how the Chargers are -3, -120. I it it really, really makes me wonder what I don't know that the market is allowing this line to hit 3. It just, to me, I just think it's way too low, but it smells bad, so I probably won't even touch this game. What do you think about the 3 showing up?
Well, it's scary because it's funny because neither team has a shutdown defense, so you're always susceptible to the backdoor cover and stuff like that. So if you put it at 3.5, it gives the Raider fans a lot of hope that even if they're down 10, they could come back to 3. Maybe that's part of the thinking why you see 3 120s, 3 125s, or something like that out there. I understand it. If I had more trust in the Chargers playing a full, complete 60-minute game from an analytical and a special team standpoint, I think the placement of this game, just like placement matters. We've talked about that. When are you going to play Houston? Is it after a 3-game road trip? Is it in between divisional games? LSU is a better team than Florida State last night, but not week 1, not with 4 new members of the secondary, going against an experienced team. I just think the placement of this game means that it's the Chargers to win. And if I were a Charger fan, I'd be disappointed if they came out of this game 0-1.
Yeah, especially when you're adding that immediate playoff revenge factor. The Chargers are the better team by far. You add the revenge factor, you added, they're at home. This line just stinks to high heaven. I just can't put my finger on why it could possibly hit 3.
Well, yeah, I think the Chargers just have to start playing 60-minute games. And until then, I understand why they're better suited to be played. On my part, I'd rather play them as a dog almost any time because they're always going to be competitive as a dog. When you start putting them in the favorite role, you start getting all these other variants in there, and it makes it tougher.
I agree. Green Bay, Minnesota. Now that's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, and I know you have a lot of thoughts on this game, and so I'm just starting to have some thoughts on this game. I'm going to be spending the next 48 hours wrapping up all my season previews. And one of the teams I'm most looking forward to doing is Minnesota. So I'm kind of going to defer to you right now because right now it's an open book how I feel about Minnesota. And I don't know what the first chapter is. I don't know what any chapter is.
This is another game where it just smells bad to me. I don't understand why Green Bay is still favored with all these lofty expectations for the Vikings. They've got one of the best home field advantages. They have high expectations. It's not unreasonable to think that the Green Bay offense is going to sputter out of the gate as Rodgers gets more familiarized with rookie weapon, so to speak. You would think that Minnesota's offense would be pretty powerful at this point, but we know Green Bay's strength at this point might be their defense. So, with this kind of divisional rivalry, you got to expect this game to be close. And I'm not sure. It's not going to surprise me to see Green Bay sputter offensively, and it's not going to surprise me to see Minnesota sputter defensively.
One of the things I've kind of looked at as I've assessed the rosters and getting ready to write the final 2 columns for each team is that Minnesota has a sneaky good pass rush. And if they get through against Rodgers and disrupt that, that will swing the game into Minnesota's favor, who comes in with some situational indicators that have me saying, I should take a very close look at Minnesota. So I know their offense is going to look different because it's not going to be the Zimmer, let's run the ball, let's pass when we have to. Okay, Kirk Cousins, I know you're 70%, but we're going to let you sit for a little while before we throw the ball. Green Bay may see a different kind of offense this week, so it'll be interesting. I'm putting this on the Minnesota pass rush. If I think they can get through this is an important divisional game right off the bat for a new
Yeah.
staff in Minnesota. They steal in quotes, but if they get this win over Green Bay week 1, boy, that confidence level rises.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of look at it as just holding serve at this point. This is a game that Minnesota probably should get, or as you kind of referenced, that changes the whole mood to lose that home game against a Green Bay team that is not expected to be as good as last year and is going to have probably some chinks in the armor.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think it'll be a roller coaster ride for Aaron Rodgers within his own head and within how he deals with the wide receivers. I've seen the stare down when a wide receiver doesn't run a good route. I mean, the look on Rodgers' face could kill, just like Tom Brady when somebody doesn't run the right route. But these are younger guys, and they're going to have to be more patient.
The Giants, Tennessee, I want nothing to do with. I'm not going to learn a single thing no matter what happens.
Slow starters. New York Giants are the slowest starting team in the NFL.
I know.
It's a culture change. You're right. Let's just see what happens week 1. I don't think I'll add much to the equation here.
No. And Tampa, Dallas is in the exact same category. If Dallas looks good, we are not sure how good either of these teams are going to be. And there's a ton of variance on both of these teams as far as I'm concerned. Although Tampa Bay is more of either the expected sort of win total range or dropping down. I don't think they could possibly have hope of doing better than expected. But they could very well have some serious issues. And if Dallas is able to win, I'm not going to necessarily, say Dallas is good. Or better than I expected. If either of these teams win, it's not going to change my opinion of the other team.
These teams are going to face more challenges from their opponents, their divisional opponents, than they're used to. And we talked about it. Tampa's down a whole mess of players. Gronkowski, Ndamukong Suh, 3 offensive linemen now. A little bit of concern about the health at running back. There's a 45-year-old quarterback who's probably going to be just fine, but he doesn't have his leading receiver to start this season, most likely in Chris Godwin. And we know Dallas has some missing parts as well. I don't think either team will be as good. The only way, because look back, Chris, to week 1 of last year. Do you remember who played? It was Tampa and Dallas. Flipped. Yeah. Tampa was home, the reigning Super Bowl champs, and Dak Prescott, who had missed almost the entire season in 2020. And he put on a show against Tampa. I would think Dallas would be disappointed if they weren't able to close the deal in this game, but who knows if they will, because they have so many incomplete parts. They're risk takers on defense. But I do think that if Tampa loses this game by double digits, that's the only thing that will perk my interest, is if Tampa shows immediate downgrade because they didn't have Gronk in the red zone, or they didn't have Suh on 3rd and 2, those kinds of things. I might take a look at downgrading Tampa if the decision in this game goes against them.
Yeah, and that would really be an overreaction week 2, I would guess also.
It depends how they lose. If they lose 35-31 or something like that, or if either team wins and whatever, I don't care. But I'm going to watch certain things about Tampa to see if we've all overvalued them.
The scoring may not be very high. The total may be a little high here. Tampa Bay is going to have some issues moving the ball, but their defense is pretty good. And we know Dallas is, might have some offensive issues. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on the execution of the quarterbacks. These guys are capable of putting 30 points each up there. So, Tom's not going to have – it depends on the weapons in there. Dallas is -1 receiver and 1 tight end from last year due to attrition. Tampa's down one wide receiver and two tight ends from last year. But the quarterbacks themselves are capable. It just depends on, you know, their supporting cast. No
Well,
opinion.
we can't forget that the teams are healthy. They've got most teams have backups that are not spent from a long season and are very energetic to show that they belong. So some injuries, if injuries happen in a lot of these games, you would think that they have adequate people to step in. So kind of an unrelated topic, but just came to mind. Denver, Seattle. I mean, we're looking forward to that, but divisional rivalry on the road. I
Past
think
divisional rivalry, not anymore.
what? Oh yeah. What am I thinking? That's funny. It is a past one. So, nevertheless, I would think, I know you have your concerns with Denver, but you would think Denver should be able to manage this situation. So, but you couldn't blame them if they just are not fully adjusted and they don't look, as good as people think that they're going to look. There may be a learning process there. And Seattle, geez, they're just going to play to be disruptive, more or less, as far as I'm concerned. They'll play hard and, um, I don't think there's too much to see here unless Wilson looks really bad, if the Denver defense looks really bad. And Seattle, we have no expectations at this point.
Yeah, I think it's better to judge Seattle off what happens on Sunday afternoon games. So let me explain that. Under the radar, if you're going to look at them on a Monday night or a
Yeah,
prime time game or
good
whatever,
point.
you're going to see a flawed team. And the other team's going to give the best shot because it's a standalone Monday night game and so on and so forth. But on a Sunday afternoon, I think Seattle will catch a lot of teams napping, especially if the other teams are off short weeks, if they've come off a divisional game, and so on and so forth. Denver, by Pythagorean theorem exploits, and I blame it all on coaching because I don't think that Vic Fangio did a good enough job, especially offensively, as the head coach in charge of how to run that team. They were better than what their record was last year. Now they add Russell Wilson. So I'm kind of flat on Denver. I couldn't believe that we were looking at 10 and 10.5 win totals, but now I understand it. So I'm flat on them. I'm not going to make any adjustments. It's a Monday night game. It's emotional for Russell Wilson. Then they're going to have the short week the next week after this emotional game. I'm just going to let the results play out. I don't think I'll learn anything from either team other than what I expect from Seattle. Not very good quarterback play.
Yeah, and you bring up an extremely important topic, and that is the way how differently teams are going to play in prime time versus those Sunday afternoon games. You can get entirely different levels of energy and effort accordingly, or lack of effort on a Sunday versus extra effort in prime time, which is what your point is, Ron.
And then you look at what's overreaction, week one overreaction. What better type of game for the general public to overreact to than a standalone Monday night football game? So we don't want to fall into that trap. That's why I'm cushioning it by saying, okay, Seattle is overmatched talent-wise against a lot of teams. So you get their best effort, that's going to be a problem. I'm not going to judge them except for on Sundays.
Yeah, so we've got 3 primetime games, which we're going to go out of our way not to over adjust on. And boy, I just lost my point.
Well, we covered the slate, and I
Yeah,
think we did a good job of sometimes it's meaningful, and we're just making notes, mental notes, and sometimes some notes on my sheets and stuff like that. And we're going to adjust to what we think, not what the results are and the actual final score or something, but what were our expectations? Were they met or not met, and why?
I know what I was going to say. I've mentioned it before with strength of schedule. And you cannot just sit there and say, okay, this team played these great teams or these bad teams. You have to take notes of each week what those dynamics were. And as Ron pointed out, you're getting maximum effort from teams on primetime games, and maybe not necessarily on Sundays. I don't think that's going to be the case this Sunday, but as the season goes
Right.
through. But it's important that you try to make adjustments game by game as the season goes on to take these little notes of, okay, well, this team played a really good team, but did they show up? And this team played a really bad team, and did they show up or not? Because the very best effort from bad teams are going to be a Jacksonville 9-6 winner against Buffalo sometimes.
Perfect
just like
example.
last season.
Yeah, perfect example.
Yeah. So just something to keep in mind is to try to grade the schedule week by week and not look back on it 10 weeks in and say, oh, well, they played Buffalo, they played Baltimore, and they played Kansas City. They played a brutal schedule. Well, maybe they played those teams in difficult spots where they've got travel issues or a short week, or they played them on the road, and
or backup quarterbacks.
Right.
I think there was one team in the NFL that played 3 or 4 backup quarterbacks.
At
this time last year, we thought anybody who played Cincinnati was getting a cakewalk. At the end of the year, they're in the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
So you have to adjust who you think are the strong teams or the weaker teams. Strength of schedule now is different than strength of schedule week 7.
Yeah. So, well, you saw our process, which is basically just taking a rundown, and I think we kind of knew what where the other guy was coming from ahead of time, except for you disagreed with me twice, which is good, and that's you want to be able to go over this type of stuff with somebody that's not going to be a yes person, that's going to give you the counterpoint as often as they can, and there's great value in that. I don't listen to 20 podcasts a week to give myself positive reinforcement on what I want to bet. I just want to absorb the information and see where it lands on Saturdays.
Yeah, it could be information overload, but at the same time, if somebody has some information you don't have, whether it be injury related or scheme related or something that's going on, it's very important to get the full picture before unleashing on a play or forming a full opinion. But good exercise, Chris.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that, some people may be disappointed that we didn't have picks, and it seemed like a little bit of repetition, but that's the way it is with week 1. And that's what Ron and I do. Sometimes there's a lot of productivity, and then sometimes there's a lot of productivity with no action. You just want to be pointed in the right direction, so to speak. So happy everybody joined us. Hope you found value. Compliment or ridicule in comments. Don't forget to subscribe. And we're going to be back a couple times more this week. So we'll see you guys shortly.